a war they did not create, to remember them and to remember the horrors they had to suffer. We are honored to welcome Mr. John Guzlowski, Mr. John Minczeski, Miss Maja, Trochimczyk, Mr. Leonard, Kress, and our translator and the host of Kritya-Poetry East and West, Miss Rati Saxena. Before beginning the conversation, I request Miss Rati Saxena to present her welcome remarks. In her welcome remarks, usually Rati Saxena ji introduces us to Kritya, but I request her to this time also introduce this book and how the project of translating the post-war Polish diasporic poetry came about. Over to you, Ms. Rati Saxena. Your mic is off.
Good evening. All of you are aware of Kritya for a long time because I have started publishing your poetry in 2008 onward, and Christina Pacosz, she was my friend, and she knows my journey from very starting for Kritya journal. You know that how we were working and how you people have worked. In 2000, when I read the Christina's poetry and John's poetry, I was astonished due to my ignorance, because I was not aware the history which was hidden from us, and maybe not told much. So, and moreover, the cruelty which could come in a poetry, which is very difficult because poetry can't handle cruelty. And but those poems were very effective, and they did not lose the charm of poetry even. You feel like reading them again and again. So John remembers that we have bought 2 issues. That was, I still remember, 4011 and 4012 of the Polish poetry at that time. And I have translated those poems, not all the poems, into Hindi in those issues only, because that was bilingual. Now also we have Kritya. And in 2024 or so, I have to remove that Kritya from the internet due to technological problem, and I have to bring another form of Kritya journal. So I find that whole set of the poetry is lost from the net, which was actually history, because I have removed that. So it is my duty to bring it back to people. It should be people, whenever they want, they can read. And that is how in 2023 itself, I have collected those poems. And I was in communication with John. John was always helpful. And we bought this book, a small book only, with the translation, with the translation of the poems, and with the history, little bit history. Because it is very strange that, not only strange, it is actually cruel truth that the country or language which has 2 Nobel Prize winner poets, many great poets or writers, the most of them writers or poets are, or their family had suffered in a very bad way. So that is why I wanted to speak. Recently, I thought because when we started this Kritya, we are doing now Kritya poetry reading, East and West, 2 poets from the Eastern countries, Eastern countries, and 2 poets from the Western countries. Mostly in India also we have many languages, 24 or so. So we 1 or 2 poets come from India only. And another set we do that book talk. But in this case, I didn't want to talk about the book much because the poetry translation itself is sufficient to tell why we have published it. I am happy that my poets whom we have published in Kritya are sitting in front of me and reading those poems in front of us. So that is also very important because poets whom we have published are talking, telling themselves. So that is why I insist Kamalakar to bring this book talk, and he is always ready to do his work. So that's how this is about the book. And the title of the book is taken from the Christina's poem, The Letters Which Are Not Sent. This was the prose which she has sent letter as an editor. And you know that in John's editorial also, there is one letter from the Poland to I think the mother's sister has sent letter to mother, something like this. So these two letters were different. One letter was from America to Poland, and another was the Poland to America. And two different people were writing those letters, and all the pain, suffering, and longing for the country, longing for the for own place, our own people, because it is not easy to see killing of our own relatives or our mother or sisters in front of us or in front. So those pains were there, and that is why I have given this title Khat Jo Bheje Nahi Gaye, the letters which were not sent. Very interesting poetry I find in it, very, very interesting. And I think you bought the Dominica's poetry also, John. You said that you are reading our poem also. Dominica's poem and all this, because they are young. But John's John was actually direct connection with the Polish pain, because he has seen his parents who had suffered directly from the concentration camp. And John has written about this also, so he will explain himself. So over to you, Kamalakar ji. Now you can invite guests. That's what I want to say. Kamalakar ji, आपकी आवाज बंद हो रही है.
Thank you, Rati ji. Along with speaking about history, this evening we will discover how poetry transforms history into human experience. I'll begin by inviting Mr. John Guzlowski. I have your poems. I read the poems in their Hindi translations in this book, and your poems arise from the memories of parents who survived Buchenwald, yet they never become merely historical documents. So my first question to you is, your poems preserve memories that many families found too painful to speak about. Did writing these poems ever feel like an act of healing, or was it more an act of witnessing?
I think it was more of an act of witnessing, and I think it was something I inherited from my father. My father could not stop talking about the war. From the time I was 5 or 6 years old, my father would tell me stories about the things that he had experienced in Buchenwald and the things that my mother had experienced being taken to the slave labor camps. I remember being 6 years old and having my father tell me about women having their breasts torn off by bayonets, friends of his being castrated and crucified in Buchenwald. And it was something, my father could never stop talking about that stuff. My mother would ask, my mother seldom talked about this. And I think she didn't talk about it because she was trying to keep those memories buried because they were such troubling memories. But my father couldn't stop talking about it. And I think I inherited his need to talk about that. And I think that's one of the things where my poetry comes from. And also my poems about my parents. I mean, what I love about my poems about my parents is that when I write them and when I read them, my parents are there with me again. My father died in 1997. My mother died in 2006. They've been gone for a while. But when I read the poems, especially if I'm reading the poems in a situation like this in a Zoom, or I'm standing in front of an audience reading the poems, and my parents come back to me as I'm reading these poems.
Right. Would you like to tell us a little more about how these the origins of these poems? How these poems, what were you going through when you began writing about these?
It's an interesting question. I had no desire to write about my parents. I first started writing about them when I was 31 years old. What I wanted to write before that is I wanted to write comic books. I wanted to write science fiction novels. I wanted to write mystery novels. I wanted to write anything but things about my parents. And then I was in graduate school working on my dissertation on postmodern fiction. And one day, suddenly this poem popped up into my head. And it was a poem about what my parents were thinking about that very moment. They were, far away from me in the city of Chicago, 150 miles away. And I started imagining what they were thinking. And it became a poem about their memories about the Second World War. And that was the first poem I wrote about them. Like I say, I was 31 years old. And for the next, it never stopped. I'm still writing poems about my parents. I've written 3 books about them. I'm working on another book right now called What My Parents Taught Me. And it's new poems about my parents and about what they taught me. And, once I started writing about them, I really never stopped. In fact, let me just say this. They appear in one of my mystery novels. My parents, fictionalized version of my parents appear in one of my mystery novels. So, they're everywhere in my writing.
Right. Many readers today know the horrors. People like me, for example, we come to know about the horrors during the war primarily through history books. What can poetry reveal that history alone cannot?
Well, that's an interesting question, and I think what history books tell us. I read a lot of history books, and I also read a lot of memoirs of people who were in concentration camps, who fought in the war. What history books give us are the details of the war, but very seldom do they tell us about the suffering of war, the grief that people are experiencing during war. Memoirs and poetry, I think, give us that in ways that the history books never do. And like I say, I read a lot of history books and a lot of memoirs about the war, and that's what I've found is the personal writing about war can give you a sense of the horrors of war in ways that the history books can't do it. Even the good history books.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Guzlowski. I think that really says why we need to listen to poetry as much as reading history. So we will straight go to your poems. Yes.
Let me just say one thing.
Yes.
I live in Lynchburg, Virginia. There's a college here called Randolph College, and there's a professor there who teaches history courses, and he teaches a course on the Second World War. Every semester for the last 10 years, he invites me in to read my poems to his students, and I think that's why he's having me read the poems to his students, to give them a sense of something beyond what the history books tell them. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I think that also is the reason why we must straight away, invite you to read some of your poems for our audience.
Yeah. So I'm gonna read some poems, and these are poems that were in the issue of Krita.
You can read any poem, no problem. You can read any poem. I will read one or two poem in Hindi. So if poems are different, then also no problem. You
Okay.
can.
Okay. Let me read. Can you tell me how much time I have for the reading? I don't want to be taking up too much time.
How much time? 10 minutes?
I think 10 minutes. Yes.
Okay. I want to read some poems about my father, and then a poem about my mother and her experiences in the war. My father was in Buchenwald concentration camp, and he spent 4.5 years there. And when he was finally liberated in 1945, he weighed 70 pounds. And when my mother saw him, she said he looked like two shoelaces tied together. And I remember asking my father what kept him alive, considering that in the camp, they were only given about 600 calories of food a day. And so this is a couple of poems about from a poem called Hunger in the Labor Camps. What my father ate. My father ate what he couldn't eat, what his mother taught him not to. Brown grass, small chips of wood, the dirt beneath his gray, dark fingernails. He ate the leaves off trees. He ate bark. He ate the flies that tormented the mules working in the fields. He ate what would kill a man in the normal course of his life. Leather buttons, cloth caps, anything small enough to get into his mouth. He ate roots. He ate newspaper. In his slow, clumsy hunger, he did what the birds did, picked for oats or corn or any kind of seed left by the cows in the dry dung. And when there was nothing to eat, he'd search the ground for pebbles, and they would loosen his saliva, and he would swallow that. And all the other men did the same. This is another poem from this Hunger in the Labor Camps. It's called What a Starving Man Has. He has his skin. He has a thinness to his eyes no bread will ever redeem. He has no belly, and his long muscles stand out in relief as if they've been flayed. He is a bony mule with the hard eyes one sees in nightmares or in hell. And he dreams of cabbage and potatoes the way a young boy dreams of women's breasts. They come uncalled for, round and fevered like rain that will never stop. There's always an empty sea in his belly, rising, falling, and seeking land. And next to him, there's always another starving man who says, "Help me, brother, I am dying here." One more poem about my dad. It's called The Germans. These men belong to the Germans the way a mule belonged to the Germans. And the Germans stood watching their hunger and then their deaths, watched them as if they were dead trees in the wind and waited for them to fall. And some of the men did. They sank to their knees like children begging forgiveness for sins they couldn't remember, or they failed to rise when the others did and were left in the wet gray fields where the Germans watched them. And the Germans stood watching when the men who were still hungry came back and lifted the dead men and carried their thin bones to the barn and buried them there before eating the soup that wouldn't have kept them alive. The Germans knew a starving man needed more than soup and more than bread, but still they stood and watched. One more poem. It's a poem about my mother. As I said, she spent 2.5 years in slave labor camps in Germany in the Buchenwald concentration district. And she was taken to the camps after seeing her mother and her sister and the sister's baby killed by the German soldiers. My mother, she wouldn't talk about any of this stuff until close to the end of her life when she was about 80 years old. And it started coming out then. Just one poem about her. It's called What the War Taught Her. My mother learned that sex is bad. Men are worthless. It's always cold, and there's never enough to eat. My mother learned that if you are stupid with your hands, you will not survive the winter, even if you survive the fall. She learned that only the young survive the camps. The old people are left in piles like worthless paper, and babies are scarce like chickens and bread. She learned that the world is a broken place where no birds sing, and even angels can't bear the sorrows God gives them. She learned that you don't pray your enemies will not torment you. You only pray that they won't kill you. Thank you.
Very disturbing and heart-wrenching poems, Mr. Guzlowski. And it's nearly 100 years since all these horrible things have happened. And again, we have war clouds hanging on some parts of the world. It's really, really sad. And I think, going back to your poems is a reminder why we must do whatever we can to convince our nations not to get into this kind of a war situation. I now invite Ms. Rati Saxena to read some of her Hindi translations of John's poems, Guzlowski's poems.
I will read one or two, but not what you have read, because in India people understand English very well, and you read very well. So I will read another poem, which मेरी माँ की मरती हुई माँ के पास कीट्स के गीत जैसी खूबसूरत जायदाद नहीं थी, न ही वह अछूती दुल्हन। मेरी माँ ने नहीं थामा था अपने माँ की माँ का लहूलुहान चेहरा, कभी उसकी आंखों में भी नहीं झांका, अलविदा भी नहीं कहा। जर्मन सैनिकों ने माँ के साथ बलात्कार कर चेहरे पर गोली दाग दी, लाते मारी। वे सैनिक थे जिन्होंने ऐसा किया, ना तो वे मनुष्य थे ना ही भगवान। उन्होंने ना ही खुशी के गीत गाए, ना ही वे गीत जो किड्स की लड़कियों ने गाए थे। सिपाहियों ने बलात्कार कर हत्या कर दी, फिर अगले घर की ओर चल दिए जहां उन्होंने महिलाओं लड़कियों से बलात्कार करना था। जब उन्होंने बलात्कार कर उनकी भी हत्या कर दी तो सैनिकों ने वह गीत गाया जो उन्होंने सीखा था जर्मनी के बियर हॉल में। लिली नाम की एक युवा लड़की के बारे में जो लैंप की रोशनी के नीचे खड़ी युद्ध से वापस लौटने वाले प्रेमी के लौटने का इंतजार कर रही थी। इससे ज्यादा कहने को है कि क्या? मेरी माँ के बारे में उन्होंने क्या देखा और मैं और क्या नहीं भुला पाई। बीते वर्षों में कटीले तारों की बाढ़ के पीछे लड़कियों को पीट पीट कर मार दिया गया, बच्चों को दीवारों पर पटक पटक कर मार दिया गया। किट्स ने कहा, सौंदर्य ही सत्य है, सत्य ही सौंदर्य है, और बस इतना ही। यदि मेरी माँ ने पढ़ा होता तो उन्होंने सिर हिलाकर मना कर दिया होता और कहा होता, सत्य तो सत्य ही होता है और सच्चाई में कोई सुंदरता नहीं होती है। I hope you understand which poem I read, that poem in which you are talking about the death of your mother's mother and Keats. So that poem's translation I have read. That poem I wanted to read because here the poetry is also there. And one another thing also about my mother. मेरी माँ 19 साल की थी, न जाने कहां से सैनिक आए मेरी माँ को खेत में ले आए। उनकी बहन जेंजा के बच्चे को जूते की एड़ी से मसल कर मार दिया गया। उसकी माँ को भी गोली मार दी, पहले गर्दन में फिर चेहरे पर लात मारते हुए उन्होंने मेरी माँ को देखा। उन्हें कोई बेपरवाह दिखी, कुंवारी थी, छोटे सफेद फूलों वाली नीली पोशाक पहने हुए। सैनिकों ने उसके साथ बलात्कार किया, इसलिए वो खड़ी भी नहीं हो पा रही थी, लेट भी नहीं सकती थी, बात भी नहीं कर सकती थी। उन्होंने उसके दांत भी तोड़ दिए, नीली पोशाक उसके मुंह में घुसेड़ दी। यदि उनके पास कैमरा होता तो वे तस्वीर भी ले लेते, वैसे ही थे। वर्षों बाद माँ ने कहा, भगवान ना किसी का भला करता है ना कुछ देता है, यह भी नहीं कहता कि कल तुम्हारे साथ बुरा हुआ था, अब तुम्हारे साथ भला होगा, ये सब बकवास है। So I read two poems about your mother, and what else we can talk about it? And I think this is sufficient for me to read. So
Yep.
over to Kamalakar ji.
Yeah, absolutely, Ratiji, you are very right. I mean, there is nothing one can say after listening to it. It's that is the power of the poems. Thank you so much, Mr. Guzlowski, for joining us and reading your poems to us this evening. Now we will go on to the next poet, Mr. John Minczeski. Please don't mind if I haven't pronounced your name correctly. Mr. Minczeski, many of your poems begin with familiar objects, a family name, a journey, a remembered place, but gradually become meditations on migration and identity. I mean, that's how I kind of understood them. My first question to you is, your poems suggest that even a name carries history. What first drew you to explore family memory through such intimate details?
Yeah, what a interesting question. And you know, I can't answer that exactly, because family has always been so important, and my relationship, for example, with my father was very fraught for many years, and we disagreed about so many things. It's like, you know, if I said it's a nice day outside, he would argue with it. So some of the family poems are difficult, and about difficult relationships. And what I'm writing now is a bit different from that. But yet, I think everything that we have, all our experiences, all of our psychic data, if you will, is contained in poetry. If that makes any sense. So if I can read a few, maybe these are new poems. Maybe you can, they can demonstrate what I'm talking about.
Yes, yes, definitely.
Okay, the first one is riffs on a line by Auden, and the line is, "Poetry makes nothing happen." That's in his poem in memory of W.B. Yeats. On nights like this, something thuds against the tennis ball or branch from the shrub below our bedroom window. Poetry makes nothing happen. I mean, lying awake as a bitter wind slashes the house, we have no need to shelter in a mosque or subway. Still, my heart aches. Poetry makes nothing happen. It could be a deer that got into fermented crab apples. It could be a deer gnawing the shrub below the window. Some windows crack from the cold, some explode. Poetry makes nothing happen, and life goes on as if there's no bounty on our ordinary world. Remember when the oracle said a great general would win the battle? The moon continues its unhurried changes as it has in the small forever of my life. It makes nothing happen, poetry. Skin cracks in the cold like a tax on breathing. Stepping inside to instant warmth from the wind, we tell each other what we already know about brutality and winter. Once again, poetry has made nothing happen, and people die every day for lack of what is found. That final line comes from William Carlos Williams, but it's such a powerful line that it found its way into the poem. I'll read two more. One is called Ode to Night. These are all fairly new poems. Collapses like a house of cards. It falls down the coulees where I live and knocks on the door, holding a sod. With a constant need for a haircut, night collects in corners under the bed, all day sequestered behind bookshelves. The cat's pupils widen. Will his 9 degrees of love prod him to budge from his spot under the porch? Night lingers in the summer surround of crickets. It seeps fully charged out of Greek amphorae. Caliph of the zodiac, abiding queen of the pliable moon, with only crickets for a lullaby. I wear ink on my sleeve. Summer puffs up like a strange, dangerous fish, the soil black and rich under my feet. And then this one, which is, we've been reading some political poems. This is a political poem in a way. It's called After the School Shooting, August 29th, 1925. Not 1925, 2025, excuse me. After the school shooting. I should preface this by saying that I spent much of my career teaching children in schools, teaching poetry to children because their teachers didn't know anything about poetry and would bring in someone like, to teach them. And so I traveled from school to school to school. And there was a school shooting in Minneapolis, and these were 9 and 10-year-olds. And I was just moved horribly, as anybody would be. Okay, this is a poem. I taught them, the 9 and 10-year-olds whose teachers brought me in, since what they knew of poetry was 575 and badum badum 5 times each line. They brought me in to spark up the dead zone after winter break. I recited poems that made them laugh. It was one way. There are others. If you have an idea that's different from the assignment, follow it. The first flash doesn't always return with the same strength. If you have nothing to write about, start with a fingernail. It was their eyes as I conducted them through the corridors of poetry. A shoe is a sardine, chalk is an ocean. As I bent to read their poems, to consult and praise their creator eyes, the universe, by which I mean God, looked back. It was the best job in the world. The kids, burning with poetry, had no time for TV. I don't know what they're paying you, a father told me once at a poetry night, his son eager for school for the first time, but it's not enough. Entire sacred universe within us. I pulled the starter cord.
Mr. Minczeski, these are somewhat different poems from the ones that I read in the translated book. But I feel that these poems, almost meta poems, seem to invite us to think or poet. Do you think that poetry is an invitation to thinking? Poetry is, or even a way of thinking?
Oh yes, yeah, and I want to expand that a little bit too, and a way of being. I think that it's as William Carlos Williams said. It's difficult to get the truth from, but people die every day for lack of what is found there. And I reference that in one of these poems. And yeah, I mean, I think it is a way of being, and I think more people need it in their life. I mean, real poetry. And I felt that that's what my job was when I went into schools to teach the children.
Right. Would you like to read one more poem, Mr. Minczeski?
I'm sorry?
Would you like to read one more poem, please?
Oh, sure. So this is one I wrote several years ago. I was, when I lived in my older house, we moved about 2 years ago or last year, and I love to garden. So this is a poem about that. In the 5th month of lockdown, I plant clematis. The shovel, striking a root, thunked all the way down to my moist heart. In acolyte, I knelt to bury the plant neck. Blame me for trusting coincidence more than fate. Hold me responsible for rose thorns on a sloping yard that hoards the memory of glaciers. Have I searched within for the gravitational field that holds me here? Weeds take over the neglected bed beside tomatoes that will forget their names come September. If there's a faint, high-pitched whistle like a nighthawk tracking the visceral night, it is the sound of my own breath. So that poem, I mean, it's about an action, just planting the clematis in the back of my house, but also I think there's more that it pulls into it, and I think it's necessary to speak about the world through the small things that we do in the world.
That's right.
And so everything has an importance to it.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Excellent poems. Now, Ratiji, would you like to read some translated ones, please?
I had only one poem of him, which is My Name, and I had translated that in Hindi. I do not remember that in English he has submitted more poems, but in Hindi I have translated one poem. My name, मेरा नाम, that is विक्टर कॉन्टोस्की के लिए, for the विक्टर कॉन्टोस्की. मेरा नाम 1910 में पोलैंड से आया और एक स्विस मालवाहक जहाज के इंजन कक्ष में छिपाकर रख दिया गया. रसोइये को उस पर दया आई. रोजाना सॉसेज, बेरी और दूध दिया. पिस्टन की आवाज और जहाज के पेंच के घूमने से 2 सप्ताह तक मेरा नाम बहरा हो गया. मेरा नाम बिना पासपोर्ट या कपड़ों के, बिना टूथब्रश या शॉपिंग बैग के स्टेटन द्वीप तक तैरकर पहुंचा. बमुश्किल खाना खाया, शाख से मुश्किल से बचा. मेरा नाम अंग्रेजी नहीं जानता था. इसे आलू के किसानों ने अपनाया, ट्रक चलाना और बियर पीना सीखा. मेरा नाम एक पत्ता गोभी के ऊपर से फिसल गया और उसे हैरों से आधा काट दिया गया. इस तरह मेरा जन्म हुआ. मैंने इसे वर्षों तक दर्द दिया. मेरा नाम रोना भूल गया. सेराफिन को एक पत्र. अच्छा, ये दिस इज अनदर पोएम. हाँ, मेरा नाम रोना भूल गया. So this is the one poem, and another poem is the one letter to Seraphim. So Seraphim को एक पत्र. Seraphim अनाथ परी, बस कुछ सुअर बचे हैं, कुछ पीले चुकंदर, शीतकालीन गेहूं आपके परपोते के लिए. आपकी माटी के विरासत के उत्तराधिकारी, बर्फ की तरह बोलियां विकसित करने वाले मैं सेंट पॉल की एक बस्ती से बोल रहा हूँ. ये अक्टूबर का महीना है. मैं खुदाई या खाद बनाने जैसा काम नहीं कर रहा हूँ. कुछ भी एक जैसा नहीं रहता. आपके घर के ऊपर जस्ता चढ़ी छत चमकती है. अब किसी के पास छत पर फूस चढ़ाने का भी वक्त नहीं है. फिर भी सब कुछ वैसा ही है. परिवार ने चुकंदर इकट्ठे किए, मशरूम निकालने और सॉसेज तैयार करने के स्वाद के लिए. उन्होंने पूछा, मैं यहाँ क्या कर रहा हूँ? मेरी उम्र कितनी है और क्या चाय चाहिए या वोदका? ये सब घर का बना है, बिल्कुल घर जैसा महसूस करोगे. उन्होंने युद्ध से प्राप्त सामान की सूची तैयार की. खेत में बारूदी सुरंग के साथ एक हाथ उड़ गया. एक पिता जो जर्मनी से पैदल चलकर आया था, मांस से अधिक हड्डी दिखाई दी. दिवालियापन हर जगह पर था. संपत्तियां दबाकर रख दी गई. मुंह भर बना लेने से लोगों की मुस्कुराहट समझ में आती थी. कुछ सुअर और एक गाय बची रही. उनसे चलने के लिए थोड़ी सी जगह. जिसने तुम्हें प्यार किया, तुमने खाना खिलाया, तुम जो भी थे. सेराफिन. Who was a seraphim actually? John, what is seraphim means what here? John?
Hello?
Seraphim.
Yeah. Seraphim is it's the name of an angel, one of the orders of angels, the highest order of angels, and it's the name of my Seraphim Minczeski.
Okay. Right. Thank you, Rati ji, for these fine translations, and also Mr. Minczeski for such excellent poems. 2 different types of poems we were able to listen, the ones that you presented as well as the ones that Rati ji presented in Hindi translations. Now we move on to our next poet, Miss Maja Trochimczyk. Miss Trochimczyk, your poetry beautifully brings together literature, music, and cultural memory. My question to you is, music appears to shape not only the rhythm of your poems, but also the way memory, kind of unfolds, as it were. How closely are music and poetry connected in your creative process? Tell us something about how poetry happens with you.
Well, I have written very few poems about when I listen to music, and I'm a professional historian. I'm trained to talk about, but when I was studying, I thought that talking music is useless. You just listen to it, or you have to play it. and they're sufficient. So therefore, I don't have many poems that I have written over the years that are very focused on music. I wrote and prepared for publication poems about musicians, about the image, about what is the music's effect on people and how music expresses some spiritual aspirations or experiences. So there's a number of poems about Ignacy Jan Paderewski that I put together a while ago. These ones are published in newspapers or just handwritten. They're found in archives, written between 1880 and 1940, mostly during his life, depicting this great pianist, composer, politician as a very many different personalities or people. He's heroic, he's romantic, he's sublime, he's a guru, he's a teacher, he is an archangel, he is a patriot, he's a hero, he's a suffering hero, or he's a victorious hero. So it's all these various images of a pianist and then impact of his music. His music teaches us about Polish history. His music opens for us, it takes spiritually to a different dimension, divine dimensions. So it's about these various aspects of listening, experiencing music. But personally, I've written very many poems like that. I have with me books because I thought if I'm doing a reading with John, it's going to be about poems, not a bunch of poems about work in my book, The Rain, the Bed, which was in because it first document and the extended memory of the war that I realized after my parents died that all these memories will be gone and nothing will remain if I don't write them out. And since I write a book, I didn't have a historical document anymore about, and it's all history. I take these experiences, memories, and make a little poem, put it together. So I've working on this project for 10 years. First, I started a little book called Slicing the Bread, then I expanded it to 30 poems called The Rainy Bread, then I added another 30 poems, and then I was expanding it. I was poems other people's experience. Somebody tells a story, and then I make it into a poem. And this is a similar interest of preserving memory, being a witness to history, but also looking for resilience, looking for strength, not just documenting what happened and what was changed, but some of the poems are written from the child's perspective. I'm looking at these things. I mean, my great aunt about a pear tree in a field, the only thing left over from her house and her orchard, everything else, because once the Soviets took it over, it was all plowed over and nothing left except one pear tree. So I have a poem about this pear tree. I have a poem which actually is the first poem I wrote for my mother. Our apartment in Warsaw had all the cabinets in the kitchen was stuffed full with paper bags of dried bread, slices of bread that she would dry and keep. She wouldn't throw out a single piece of bread because she was so traumatized by hunger during the war that and to me it was pretty normal that I thought everybody has every single cabinet in the kitchen stuffed with paper bags of dried bread because it's the kind of thing that keeps you alive. And only after I talked to other people, I realized that was just my mom's specific trauma and the family trauma that it was expressed this way because of hunger. So this is the civilian experiences, the child experiences from the war. So maybe if you would permit me, I would read some poems from this Rainy Bread book, starting from this poem about the bread. Okay?
Yes, please do, please do.
Yes. Slicing the bread. From my mom, Henryka Teresa Trochimczyk, born Wajszczuk. Her mother's hunger one huge pot of hot water with some chopped weeds, komesa, lebioda. She taught her to recognize the leaves just in case, plus a spoonful of flour for flavor. Lunch for 20 people crammed into a 2-bedroom house. The spring was the worst. Flowers, birdsong, and nothing to eat. You had to wait for the rye and potatoes to grow. The pantry was empty. She was hungry, always hungry. She ate raw wheat sometimes. Too green, the kernels she chewed, still milky, made her sick. 30 years after the war, her mother stashes paper bags with sliced dried bread on top shelves in her Warsaw kitchen. 20, 30 bags, enough food for a month. Don't ever throw any bread away, her mother said. Remember, war is hunger. Every week, her mother ate dziad soup, fit made with crumbled wheat buns, stale sourdough loaves, pieces dry soaked in hot tea with honey. She wanted to remember taste. So that was my mother's obsession, and then that's why there's the rainy bread on the cover. And now I thought I'd read you the poem about my mother's maternal aunt. Her husband was caught as soon as they invaded the little village and shot in the street because he was a Polish Serb. The Soviets came, and she was in 24 hours deported to Syria with sons. And then after the war, she came and she saw what remained. Her aunt, ciocia, Tonia for Antonita, for my great aunt Antonina Glińska, born Wajek. Only a pear tree between fields of sugar beets and corn. Ripe pears, that's all left from the house, barn, and orchard. Farm, she raised her sons, milked her cows, and baked her bread. Only a pear tree, a lone memento standing forlorn in an open field. They plowed it over, the village church and bus stops, neighbors' corrals, horse used to neigh. They plowed it over, one of hers, and cosmos, its fragile lace of leaves, kissed by sunlight, a dream of the flower. She used to so love its effervescent beauty in the past. It is not painful now, just surprising. Her whole life gone, and only one tree left. No trace of her ancestral village on the maps. It was the worst to see her neighbors running with news, her husband shot in the middle of the dusty village road. No time for grief. She saved her tears for later. The orders came at once. A day to pack, a long train ride to an unfamiliar city near a river she never longed to see. They said, pack wisely, take the warmest clothes, boots, pillows. Bring as much food as you can carry. Where you are going, there's nothing except for freezing breath and bitter cold. Only a pear tree in an empty field of stubble. Only a pearl tree in her golden field of dreams. So that was my ciocia Tonia, who used to gather the whole family for lunches when I was younger, and she told me some of her stories and memories from the war. But then when I wrote the first book, I went to a conference of survivors Eastern Poland. 1/3 of Polish lands was taken over. Soviets and Polish people were deported. A lot of them died. A lot of lost everything. And my extended family is from that group. So one of the organizers told a story about his mother who all life carried an iron key in her purse because when she left, she locked the gate to the house with the iron key. So this is a song, a key, written for Kozłowski and other. This is a key. This is an iron key. This is a large iron key. This is an old large iron key. A key my mother carried her purse. This old large iron key my mother carried in her purse every single day. The field. This is a flat field. This is a flat, empty field. This is a flat, empty field in the Ukraine that used to be Poland. A flat, empty field where my mother's house once stood, surrounded by a tall wooden fence with a tall wooden gate and a solid, large wrought iron lock. They told her, pack. They told her, go. They told her, out. You do not belong. This is our land. There is no house. There is no fence. There is no gate. This is the key.
Excellent poems.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Do you consciously write as a Polish poet or as an American poet or simply as a poet?
Well, when I came to Canada, I started writing poetry in English. I didn't wrote, and I just wrote for myself. When I came to America, I consciously decided to become an American of Polish descent. I did America, my country, Poland. These are my roots, my family. I have to preserve it. I have to memorize these stories. But I'm from America, and I write about growing roots in my new land, in my new country. So if you have time for one more poem, I read you a poem from my garden. I wrote an awful lot of poems from my garden because that's what really kept me rooted in this country, is the land, is the soil, is seeing what's growing and growing things, not vegetables. I enjoy land for beautiful roses and trees and bushes and watching the birds flying around. And what I discovered also a different kind of bees. So in my book called Bright Sky, which was written and collected during the pandemic, I decided to collect the positive poems organized in the 4 seasons about various aspects of life from spring to winter. But this one, if I show you the picture, is a picture of the leaves of my rose, which had these weird cutouts, like the circular cutouts, and these cutouts are made by bees, which are called mason bees, and they cut the leaves of my roses, about which I was quite mad initially because I didn't know who is damaging my roses. But then I saw a bee going around in a circle and cutting a piece of a leaf and taking it for her baby to make a little blanket. So I said, okay, yes, the bees can take my roses for the blankets for the bees. So this is the poem called Mason Bee. I share my roses with the mason bees. Iceberg leaves they like the best, cutting circles and ellipses from the edge inwards. Iceberg roses, not iceberg lettuce, mind you. That's far too crunchy to make soft beds, wrapping bee babies in green, white, or pink silkiness, smooth and pliable like we ought to be, smiling under the merciless gale of time, raging river flowing backwards, always backwards. Looking at my mutilated roses, blossom, defense against evil guarding my front door like bee soldiers in a hive, ready to sacrifice just one thing, a miniature warrior is gone, having lived just to protect and serve us, the worker bees, buzzing around our lives, cutting circles and ellipses in white roses. Bees and humans, we are all children of the queen bee, our mother. We make honey of our kindness, virtues, character, wisdom, self-reliance. Attentive, focused on a perfect circle, semicircle, or ellipsis. We breathe deeply, delight in nectar, killing pollen, emotions, sights, impressions, flying back home to make the sweetest gold, translucent honey of our dreams.
Excellent, excellent. Lovely poem. Thank you so much. Thank you so very much for presenting your poems to us and our audience. Ratiji, would you like to read her translations? Do you have translations of
I don't have a translation of her poetry. I think she was not there in that English issue.
No.
Right.
That issue, no? But what I want to say that please send your poems by mail, and we are publishing next issue. We will like to publish all the Polish poetry, so your poems also in English, and we will try to translate into Hindi also. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trochimczyk. Now we move on to the next poet, Mr. Leonard Kress. Mr. Kress, your poems that I read in the Hindi translations, they combine historical awareness with wit, irony, and careful observation. How do you decide when a historical event has become poetry rather than simply history?
Usually it has to intersect in some way with both my life and something in the culture at large. So there's three intersections: the historical, the cultural, and personal. That way.
Yeah, and many of your poems balance seriousness with irony. Does humor sometimes allow us to confront painful histories more honestly?
I think so, but I also think I might lean too heavily on irony, and sometimes because of history, because of the ravages of history, it veers a little bit into cynicism sometimes. So a lot of my irony is an attempt to avoid cynicism.
And you combine the intellectual reflection with very vivid imagery. But when you're writing, what comes first in your writing? The idea or the image?
Probably the image and the sounds, the music of how I imagine the image. The sound is pretty much what drives me. You might not think that because a lot of my poems are narrative, but I'm still very much driven by music and the sounds of the language.
Right. Yes, yes. Please read your poems. Let's listen to some of your poems now.
All four of my grandparents came from Poland, Lithuania, and Belarus, but they came over 100, 120 years ago. So all that has been lost to me growing up. And even my last name had undergone a change. So that was a different world to me that I've been kind of exploring and kind of delving into through poetry, translation, and travel, maybe for the past 40 or so years. This is a poem called Jewish Synagogue in Warsaw. I've been to Poland many, many times, but for some reason I only made it to the Jewish synagogue in a trip last year. So Jewish Synagogue in Warsaw. I shouldn't be shocked that I cannot find even a vestige of the last remaining ghetto wall, relying on graffiti that must baffle my phone's GPS, though the Kinder transports clearly had no trouble. But here it stands, the synagogue, rebuilt like the entire bombed out city from rubble. I wonder if the Masons had much trouble separating Christian rocks from Jewish ones. No one sees me enter the building. A woman unleashes her dog to chase squirrels in the adjoining park, and board cops pace in pairs. I am the lone suspect here. Metal detectors, scanners, a brief interrogation. If I had chutzpah, I'd offer to drop my drawers to display my circumcision. In the sanctuary, the vacant bima glares back at my own blatant ignorance of Torah, the Bible, as some hidden voice bores deep into me. I am unsure if I am being praised or castigated. I want to climb the balcony stairs and hide beneath the voluminous skirts of vanquished souls to partake in what they prayed.
Please read more poems. Excellent poem.
Okay.
Please read more.
This is actually one that cites the kind of the intersection between Poland and India, because there was at an international poetry festival in Warsaw many years ago, and there was a South Indian poet who was a member of the panel. So this is called International Poetry Festival, Warsaw. The poet reads aloud a South Indian language I've never heard of, but here at the Writers' Union, it's translated into Polish, declaimed by a washed-up TV actor whose last role was Solidarity Informer. Who can blame him dumping vodka into his glass of tea? He follows a dread host of speeches, followed by a string quartet from State Higher School of Music No. 5, cellist with her chain-link belt, narcoleptic black hair, which she wakes from her eyes. They play something irrepressibly Polish, waltz, mazurka, polonaise, competing for the prize. She could be my daughter ringing berets from Bach's unaccompanied cello suite in the next room as I stick cinnamon in the curry I'm cooking. Now the poet tells of Buddha's favorite disciple, Ananda, who's tempted by a young village girl who's drawing water from a well. In the time it takes to empty the small bucket into a larger one, she's already in love with him, saffron-robed, barefoot, head shaved. Oh, Ananda, she cries, please renounce your vows. What good is perfect bliss compared to my love for you? He leaves, chanting a sutra, not bothering to turn back, as she struggles to hoist and balance her yoke of laden buckets. And
Yes,
as I
fantastic. Yes,
as I said,
fantastic.
I do a lot of translation. And one of the poets I really love translating is a poet from the 16th century, Jan Kochanowski. And he wrote a series of poems about the death of his young daughter, Urszula, or Ula, as he calls her. And they're called treni, or laments. And this particular one, it's sort of a translation, but I've kind of altered it, so it's partially mine. And I've made it into a sonnet, first of all, and that's something his poems were not sonnets. And in this poem, he talks about the dowry chest that he has for his daughter, in which he's collected clothes for her future wedding, and how, in the end, that dowry chest becomes the coffin that he buries his daughter in. So, a perfect tragic image. So this is number 7, lament number 7, on the death of his daughter, Urszula. Hangers draped with clothes you'll never wear. They miss the warm touch of your body. Moths will soon begin to feed upon that cloth. What rhetoric now will persuade me to clear your closet out? The iron sleeps beside the starch. Ribbons remain wrinkled and knotted under the golden clasp. Flowers on your dress potted in the fabric of our grief, bloom since you died. Useless flowered garments, they should be boxed and given to the poor. I fear we've lost too much in boxing you instead. This crate shipped off to Hades, its cargo, my fate. For I've just sealed this oak chest's heavy lid, forever shutting away the dowry and the bride. So that's my
Fantastic.
contribution.
Thank you so much, Mr. Leonard, Kress. Excellent poems. Really enjoyed listening to you, and thank you for presenting your poems to us.
It was my pleasure.
Mr. John Guzlowski and John Minczeski and Miss Maja Trochimczyk and Mr. Leonard Kress, thank you so very much for presenting your poems to us. And because today is also, the focus was on this particular book, I thought before we end, I would like to bring in Madam Rati Saxena to maybe say something about this book and also read some poems that if you wish to read some of the other poems, poems of other poets, if you wish to, or say something about this book, maybe.
First of all, I think John want to read some poems. He sent me. John, do you want to read some poems now? You sent me some. Remember, your mic is off. You sent me a few. Yeah, your mic is off, please. Your mic.
Okay.
Mic.
Yes. I wanted to read a poem, a couple poems by Oriana Ivy. She's a Polish-American poet. She came to America when she was 17 years old with her mother. She lives in San Diego. She was a journalist for a number of years, and now she's writing poetry. I just want to read one of her poems. It's called All Souls, and it's about the celebration of All Souls Day in Poland. Sometimes I think Warsaw fog is the dead coming back to seek their old homes, wanting to touch even the walls. But they cannot find those walls, so they embrace the trees instead. Lindens and enduring chestnuts. They embrace the whole city, lay their arms around the bridges and the droplet beaded street lamps. They pray in the square of 3 crosses, kneel among the candles and flowers under bronze plaques that say, on this spot, 100 people were shot. They bow, they kiss even the railroad tracks. They do not complain, only hold what they can in unraveling white. I just wanted to read one of her poems. Thank you.
I think you were you wanted to read Dominica's poem also. You were, because you have given her name, Dominica.
I don't have Dominica's poem. I don't know what I did with it.
I think we can read the Christina's poem, because Christina was behind this mission. Christina Pacosz, she was a friend for the Kritya from very much starting, and I want to mention another poet also, that is actually she is Mary Durnay. Mary Durnay came to Kritya festival after this issue, when we have bought the issue. So in 2013, she came to India. She was very close and very nice to Kritya, and she came to our Kritya festival. And somehow she was not well, and she is not with us. But the innocence of the Mary, everyone remembers still, the kind of innocence she has. which mostly the people or women from the village have that innocence. So I want to remember her today, and I want to read Christina's few poems. And John, if you have those one or two poems, you can also read Christina's poem, just to remember. Christina is not well at all. She has 2 bouts of cancer, and she was not able to move. She is not able to come. She wanted very much, and she was behind this mission. So I will like to read the Christina Pacosz poems in Hindi. First poem, I was very much impressed by the Dr. John Guzlowski, for the John Guzlowski. I have read about him somewhere, but this poem is very small and very affecting. जो डरे नहीं गाने से, पंक्ति के अंत में उन्हें मालूम था कि क्या करना है। बच्चों के साथ बॉक्स कार से निकलकर वे चलते गए, पहुंच गए गैस चैम्बर में गाते हुए। I think people remember if his history, I do not know in Hindi, because he was children specialist, I think psychiatric or it's a doctor, and he wanted to save those children who were, just wanted them to sing and smile, even when they were going to the gas chamber. That was a and he himself entered into gas chamber with the children, so children will be not afraid of the death. Now, another poem I will read. One more poem. Many poems I have translated because she was giving me poems many times, and I had translated a lot. So, the घर वापसी, returning home. जमीन भूल गई उसे, बच्चा ही तो था वह जब घर छोड़कर गया था। सेब का दरख्त जिसे लगवाने में उसने मदद की थी, फलने को तैयार है। फिर भी 60 फसलों के बाद भी, उसके जाने के बाद भी आर्किड को भी याद नहीं कि कितनी नाजुकता से उसने जड़ों के पास की गंदगी को साफ की थी और झुककर टेढ़ी हुई डाल के करीब हौले से मिट्टी थपथपाई थी। दरख्तों को याद है केवल कलियां और उनका खिलना, फल और फसल, फिर सर्दी के मौसम में एक गहरी लंबी नींद। केवल उसे ही याद है उसकी, वह सबसे बूढ़ी है, बहुत कम बोलती है, उसके काम से भरे लंबे दिन, काम 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 से झड़कर सड़ रहे हैं, काम बढ़ रहा है, चुनना पकाना, आधे दिन तक आग सुलगाना, फिर असंतुष्ट नींद। सूरज पार चला गया, खेतों और आलुओं ने सफेद मांसपेशियों को ढीला छोड़ दिया गीले खेतों में। मेरे पिता एक दूसरी जिंदगी को याद करते हैं जो तंदूर में जला दी गई थी, एक जमीन में दफना दी गई थी। कौन शौक मनाता है यहूदियों के लिए, भुला दिए गए थे लोग विदेशी जो ईसा को नहीं पूछते, लेकिन इंतजार करते रहते हैं उनका जब तक वे खुद ही ना मिट जाएं। मेरे पिता भी इंतजार करते, सोचते हैं कि काश वे यही रह पाते, मर सकते उनके साथ वे जो दुकानदार, लाल सिर वाली औरतें, बच्चे, बतके, बकरियां चराने वाले ऑर्गेन। So these 2 poems I'm reading, these are the Christina's poems. And John, do you want to read Christina's poem into English, 1 or 2? Do you have?
Yes, I found some of her poems.
Okay, one. Okay.
And the first one I have is called To a Silk Tree. Not convinced by Missouri's more temperate spring, you remain brown and bare, your allegiance to sere winter clear in your refusal to float green leaflets whose fronds fold each night like hands at prayer. It will be almost full summer before your frothy pink blossoms appear to scent the air with a spice as rare as one imported from old Persia, your birthplace. All your greening is yet to come. The season of brown pods clattering like long knives in the fury of a cold wind is not upon us. Your fruit filled with many trees waits its turns to be. One more poem called The Mother of Violence. Now I am seeing the natural blackness of this world, not only objects illuminated by light, how to measure the darkness lingering beneath the trees, the imported silk, the native oak, even as their uppermost branches are a green blaze in the sun. Remember the iridescent plumage of the hummingbird is black without the light. Black like a branch bereft of the life of the living, leaves, charcoal waiting for the flames. This is not the time for debate, which came first, the light, the dark, but recall how shadow is at the beginning before the word. The vinyl epilogue, a black silhouette of a hawk on the window. A warning for birds to stay away, how the shadow of the predator troubles the dreams of its prey. The swift darkness of the the swift darkness of the mongoose darting across the blacktop road on the path of lava erupting from the molten void at the center of the earth. Okay.
Thank you very much. I want to say that when I'm talking to you, I feel that this book needs, I think I have to work for the second issue of this book, because I might have left some poems or poets. But in this book, not only this Christina Pacosz, Isabella Philippine, Maria, John Guzlowski, Lisa S. L. Sidlarge, Lillian Valley, Linda Neyman Forrest, Jenna Dubrow, Peter Burinski, John Minczeski, Phil Boyski, and Domina Broisky, Witsaw Shimborka or Czesław Miłosz. All these poets are there. And the most interesting work when I was working that, which was very different from others. Actually, I think Maria was also supposed to come. Her poems also I translated with very much interest. But I just want to talk about the Jenna Dubrow. I think she is what she is saying. She's American poet. She's not Polish. I do not know, because it is written that her birthplace is Italy. But she has worked for the Holocaust when she was working for the Center for the Advanced Holocaust Studies. She was doing some fellow, and in that, why I was interested that she has written a poetic novel, and she wanted to write a poetic novel, but she was actually communicating in her mind with the Jewish women, or that Jewish woman was not alive, but she was communicating her mind. It was imaginary, and she in a Yiddish language, and it was long before the feminism. And because of that, and at least as if the Ida is Ida level is talking to Jenna. Ida, as if Ida has written the poetry or talk about her. It was very different from a very different experience as a translator for me, because Yiddish is also a different kind of language, which is not which was by German Jews used to read, and Armenian and other people also had this. But the way she was communicating with a imaginary character was very, very interesting, and it is thought-provoking. That poet is as if communicating with the Ida. And she says that sometimes we used to fight, sometimes I wanted to write in a white, clean paper, and she said, no, you have to write like this. Your words should be written with the clarity. And that is how, the Ida was communicating and talking about the body of women, and this. She, the poet, called herself translator, though she was a poet, but she was communicating and translating Ida as if she is translating. So it's so interesting for me that how could the poet reach bring the culture of that time in her poetry. So that was most interesting. Still, I feel that I have to work again on this poem, these poets. And I'm thankful to you all because I wanted, at least from India, I want to say that, yes, I mean, America and in UK, people know the history of Polish people that who suffered, but in India, we didn't know much. Now people are, they are started knowing about it, but not much is known to people. And we have not read in our any kind of Indian history or India history written in India or in our books, course books. So that was a very thought-provoking experience while translating these poems. I have not translated all together. I was translating for Kritya and then I collected them. So I will be honest that I have not worked recently. It was with me in Kritya itself, and I collected them. I could not collect some of them because even though I was communicating with John at that time also, but still we have a limitation. I will like to bring out the second volume of this issue, this book, maybe in another name, and possibly we will bring more Polish voices in Hindi translation. Hindi is one of the major languages of India, and it happens when you translate into Hindi, people can, most of the language people can translate it from Hindi to other language. So the people, I think it is good that we can read these poems and we can understand how the war is cruel, and the memory of the war cannot be removed for generations because they imprint in your heart, in your brain. And so even they come as imagination, tell their pain and sorrows. So I thank you, all of you. I thank you to come to this podcast, and I request you to send your poems in English as soon as possible again, so that next issue of Kritya we can bring in the print also. Not print, internet link, because now the Kritya is another kind of thing. So over to Kamalakar ji.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Rati ji, for introducing the background of this book and announcing that you perhaps will be coming up with another edition, maybe even enlarged one. Thank you so much. This evening has reminded us that poetry does more than preserve memory. I think the poems that we heard today and the conversation that we had with these excellent poets enables how poetry it tells us how poetry enables memory to travel across languages, cultures, and generations. And it has been, as Rati ji has said, it's been really eye-opening and a real opportunity for us to listen to your poetry. The histories that shape these poems belong to Poland, but the emotions they embody belong to humanity. And we definitely also participate in that. Through translation, these voices now become part of the literary conversations in India as well. So thank you so very much, Rati Saxena ji, for translating these poems. And my sincere thanks to Mr. John Guzlowski and Mr. John Minczeski and Ms. Maja Trochimczyk and Mr. Leonard Kress. Thank you so very much for being with us this evening. It's evening here in India, being with us this evening and presenting your poetry. We would be reading more of your poems in the days to come. And thank you so very much for spending your time with us. And thank you, Ms. Rati Saxena, for hosting this evening's presentation of diasporic post-war Polish diaspora's poetry. Thank you so very much. And good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.